Father, see our prayer. We dance for the rain. 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 Well, good evening. We want to welcome you to our show this evening. I'm Troy.
And I'm Belinda.
Good evening. We're glad to have you here. As you can see, we've changed a little set around here, and we've got a wonderful guest here tonight. Would you like to introduce our guest today? And just remember, we're in a month of recovery, and we're still celebrating our recoveries here in our community and all over the world. So we have a guest here today we want to introduce you to. And Belinda, would you introduce our guest today, please?
Yes, this is David Stoker. And he has a recovery program here in Springfield, and he is here to share with us today his testimony and also his recovery program.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Let me make sure I got this right. And I did it again, dear. Hey, you know what? I'm in the process of getting everything correct, and I apologize for that. It's Better Life in Recovery. We're so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad to meet you. You look like one of my uncles. And it's so awesome that he does look like Uncle Morris, doesn't he? Uncle Morris worked at Beach Aircraft in Wichita, Kansas. Anyway, there's that hit. I better shut up. Let's go ahead and let's hear from this gentleman
Mr.
today.
Stoker.
Yes, Mr. Stoker.
So where do you want me to start? Testimony?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, if you wouldn't mind sharing
And if
your
you
testimony.
just talk right into that mic if you would, so the people outside can hear you. And there you go.
Sounds amazing.
There you go. All right.
So my name is David Stoker. I'm a person in long-term recovery. For me, that means I haven't used alcohol or other drugs since January 31st of 2009. But in order for me to be in recovery, I obviously have to be in recovery from something.
Right.
Yes.
So I always jokingly say my parents should have known there was going to be problems to begin with because I was born in Devils Lake, North Dakota. But my first memory is when I was probably about 3 years old, and it's being molested by a babysitter. I grew up in a family where my dad had a drinking problem. Back then, he was what they called a functioning alcoholic. We moved from North Dakota to Peoria. My dad worked 12-hour shifts at Caterpillar and then would go in the garage and drink himself, sometimes unconscious.
Right.
I also learned very quickly about hypocrisy and some of those things. My parents were also the kind of parents that would yell and scream at each other. So we would be yelling, screaming, cussing at each other, and as soon as the front tire of our vehicle hit the church parking lot, it was nothing but big smiles and, hey, how you doing, brother so-and-so?
Yeah.
Great, good to see you.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I grew up with a lot of that. So I always remember sitting there and listening to my parents read an article in the Journal Star about a child molester. And when they were reading about it, they said, oh my gosh, those people are disgusting. And that's exactly what my babysitter called me. So I thought they were talking about me, so I never told my parents. It actually went on for years. And eventually my mom got tired of my dad's drinking, and we moved from Peoria to a little place that's about an hour-and-a-half school bus ride to Bringeton called Round the Mountain Road.
Oh, wow.
And she dropped me off with my grandpa, and she left. She worked, and she was trying to save money to get a place, and she'd be gone for a month or two at a time. My grandpa was the kind of guy who would beat me and then call him to school and say, hey, he's going to help me in the fields and not let me go back to school for a week or two until the cuts and bruises had healed up.
Oh, man.
Believe it or not, he'd also call me disgusting while he was doing it. You know, he's like, you're disgusting for crying, you're this, you're that. And once again, I thought it was all because of what me and my babysitter had done. So I kind of owned that.
Right.
My dad got custody of me the summer before 7th grade. He lived in a little town outside of St. Louis called Highland in Illinois. And he worked overnights, and the first night that he went to work, I took a walk. I bumped into a kid that was about my age. We started talking. We were both going to be going into 7th grade. What I came to find out was his big brother called us over and asked me a question I think there's only one answer to. He looked at me and he was like, are you cool? And I was like, yeah, I'm cool. And he said, do you smoke? I'd been stealing my grandpa's cigarettes for a while, so I was like, yeah, I smoke. And what they passed around wasn't a cigarette. But about the second or third time I took a hit off of it, I stopped thinking about all the abuse and trauma. The next night I met up with the same group of kids after my dad went to work, and they introduced me to alcohol. And I found the same thing with alcohol. The more I drank, the less I thought about all the abuse. And I quickly found out that if I stayed under the influence of one thing or another, that not only did I not think about my past, but nobody could hurt me today. And I really, really enjoyed that feeling. It also gave me an opportunity to finally fit in somewhere too. And I really liked that. So it would progress over time. I just say it this way. I don't like to get into the drug use. I don't want to glamorize anything, but I will say over the next 24 years, I would progress to methamphetamine and then opioids after a car accident, and I would die 8 times. I'd be in and out of jail, prison. Actually turned 21 in Boonville Correctional Center here in Missouri. I've tried everything. I tried outpatient, residential rehab, medication, psychiatrist, psychologist, therapist. Absolutely nothing worked. Through all of this, I had become an atheist and then over time an agnostic. And I found myself working here in Springfield at a restaurant called Ruby Tuesdays. I had reached a point where I'm like, I'm not doing drugs anymore. So I had left Branson and moved up here to Springfield and turned into just a full-blown alcoholic. And I justified it because, of course, I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm just going out and drinking with my friends. Of course, we drank completely differently, but that was neither here nor there. So I found out that I scored high enough on the GED that I got in prison to go to college, and by this time I have gotten an associate's degree at OTC, 2 bachelor's degrees at Missouri State, well, at SMSU, and I was working on my master's degree at MSU now, and I was a full-blown alcoholic. I would drink every night, and to the point I would pass out. I'd go to the bars, and after the bars, I'd either go to an after party, or if there wasn't one, I'd have an after party at my place. And then my dad, who also has a lot of the same mental health problems, mental health diagnoses that I do, had died by suicide. And that kind of put me over the edge. And what I was doing got even worse, if that was possible. And I ended up breaking up with my girlfriend at the time, who was the mother of my son, and she stopped letting me see him. And I go into work, and one of the guys that I work with, Nate, looks at me, and he's like, man, I've never seen you this down. I've never seen you like this. I wish you'd go to church with me. And I looked at him, and I laughed, and I'm like, dude, you were lucky to get me to church for your wedding. I don't do church. I don't like Christians.
Oh, yeah.
We've heard that.
We've heard that before.
Unfortunately, I think sometimes as a Christian, I feel sometimes we're our own worst enemies, But about a couple weeks later, he invited me again, and I turned him down. And then a couple weeks later, his wife was visiting him at work. And Becca comes up to me, and she's like, you know what, David? Me and Nate this Sunday are going to hear live music and barbecue, man. It's all free. Would you like to come with us? I saw you're off. And I was like, heck yeah, I love barbecue.
Free food.
Love music.
Yeah.
And they're like, awesome. It's right after church. So I went. And during first service, they actually had something that was called, it's not really Celebrate Recovery, but they kind of, they called it Celebrate Recovery, and they went through the steps in the group. And I got introduced to a guy there who they call Chicago Mike, who's a huge, I love everything Chicago. Like, I'm an Illinois kid, so I'm a Bears fan, a Bulls fan, a Blackhawks fan,
Don't
a
say
Cubs
Cubs.
fan.
Oh, Lord, no.
You can pray for me later. But and me and him kind of hit it off right away. And then the sermon, it was about Paul, the good I want to do, I do not do. No, it's
Right.
the evil I do not want to do. That is what I do. The first song that they played was Cry Out to Jesus by Third Day. And literally they
yeah.
talk about addiction in the song.
Sure they do.
And I actually enjoyed myself and found myself hanging out with people that didn't care. Whether I was drinking, whether I was going and partying, they just wanted to spend time with me and love on me. And when I got done, Becca looked at me and she said, what do you think? I said, I'm not drinking your Kool-Aid. But, it's been really fun hanging out with everybody. I'll probably come back if I'm off on Sundays. So for like the next 6 months, if I was off on a Sunday, like once or twice a month, I'd go to church during first service. I would go to the Celebrate Recovery. Then I'd go to a service with Nate and Becca, and then we'd go out to eat together.
Yeah.
And it was nice to have somebody that cared about me without wanting anything in return.
Right.
So I found myself 6 months later, I am leaving a bar after drinking all night, and when I pull out, an officer pulls out behind me.
Oh, no.
And by this time,
Oh no.
exactly. So by this time, I'm actually like I said, I'm working on my master's degree, and I'm doing a practicum at a treatment center,
Okay. Yeah.
a full-blown alcoholic.
Yeah.
So I know one thing. I know if they pull me over, I'm going to get a DUI. If I get a DUI, they're going to kick me out of my practicum. If they kick me out of my practicum, I'm going to get kicked out of grad school.
Exactly.
And foxhole prayer. God, if you're real, you let me not get pulled over.
Yeah.
I will start going to church every Sunday. And I turned, and the cop turned with me, and I was like, God, if you're real, you let me not get pulled over. I'll start going to church every Sunday, and I'll quit drinking. And by the time I pulled onto my street, I was going to start going to church every Sunday. I was going to quit drinking, smoking cigarettes, drugging, premarital sex, cussing.
You name it. I'm not gonna even fart in public, man. I'm telling you what.
I didn't realize there were that many corners between the bar and my house until that
Yeah,
night.
Exactly.
So and when I got in, I opened up my garage, pulled my car in, shut the door behind me, and I passed out in my car, which
Right.
is something I did a lot back then.
Yep.
And when I woke up the next morning, I actually remembered the night before, which was really different. And I started thinking about it, and the voice that's always talked to me was like, you know what? Are you really going to try again just to fail? You know
Yeah.
you can't do this. You've been trying for the last 25 years, and you've never been able to do it. You know, literally in that 24-year period of my life that I used, I never went longer than 2 months without using, and
Right.
one of those months was when I was in a residential rehab.
Uh-huh.
Right? So, I mean, I had absolutely no willpower, and I always tell people I was beat before I ever started. So I hopped in the shower because it was Super Bowl Sunday that I woke up on, and I had plans to go to one of my friends' houses where everybody drank and everybody smoked. And I hopped into my car, and I headed there. I was done. I was giving up on the deal that I made with God. And I always say I have to thank, first I have to thank the Rolling Stones, because they came on the radio, and I do not like the Rolling Stones. So I started flipping through trying to find something I actually liked, and I came to a dead spot. So I was like, oh, I wonder what song's getting ready to start, or if it's a commercial. And the first words out of the speaker were, I wish you could see me now. I wish I could show you how I'm not who I was. It's a song by a guy named Brandon Heath.
Brandon Heath, honey. Yeah.
And I heard a voice that I'd never heard before say, go home, you can do this. And being the man I am, I pulled over to the side of the road, I bawled, and then I flipped my car around, and I drove home.
There you go.
And that was the last day I used. It was the last day, I didn't use that day. I didn't smoke cigarettes that day. I've been in one fight since, and it was in a boxing ring for a police athletic fundraiser. I might have cussed a couple times, but I always say it's progress, not perfection.
There you go. Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so that's kind of my testimony in a little nutshell. The next day, I called up the associate pastor, and who I'd talked to a few times, and I'm like, listen, I need to come in and talk to you. And I went in, and he, that's when I accepted Christ into my heart, and it's literally made all the difference.
It has. You've got a new beginning. Now that you've started a new life, and things have all become new again, you've actually started over. I think that's what happened to me. I kind of started over. And they say start over, but and I in my life probably like you said, did the same thing you did. Only I got to the point where I just got tired of my friends. I put my you know what? I was putting my friends before my wife, and that's when it really hit me. And she says, "You're hurting me too." And it's like, whoa! I didn't want to do that. So I kind of woke up. And then the place I went to, these guys were really bad. They wanted to kill me. They wanted to take all my food. Yeah, they were really hard criminals. And then they put you out here in the boonies with these hard criminals. And I was just there because I had a marijuana problem, man. Smoked my weed and thought it was her fault and da-da-da-da-da, you know what I'm saying? But no, and then they put me out here with these guys that wanted to kick my butt and kill me and eat my food, and boy, I was eating chiggers and ticks, and no, but it was like that, dude. It was. And you know what happened? After a month, I realized that, hey, I don't belong here. And then like my wife was saying, and the man who you're going to meet here this week, if you watch the show in a couple of days, Ken Rensink, I ended up in his driveway. And I said, I need help.
He's a
And
pastor.
He's a pastor. And so he said, we can get you help. And you know, it's like I don't. You probably had that one person in your life that you could trust, and mine was him. And I couldn't trust my wife, but I was still blaming her for everything until I grew up. And then when I got through talking with him, and he brought me home, then I really realized that I needed help. I really did need help because I was letting it control me, like you said. And we get to the point where we realize that we need help. That's when we start growing. So now that you've got that, and you're just you've got a college degree right now, you say, and
Yeah, so I'll kind of jump in there.
Yeah.
I ended up getting my master's degree, becoming a licensed clinical social worker. I was a therapist for 8.5 years.
where at? Here in town?
Here in town.
Okay, good.
I was Carroll Jones, and then AO, and then Preferred Family Healthcare.
okay.
And I worked with residential clients and treatment in Greene County treatment
Greene
courts the whole time. I
Oh,
started.
wow, cool.
I did 5.5 years working with all women, and then 3 years working with all men. And over the course of that, I started looking around, and I realized that there really wasn't a whole lot of fun, pro-social, sober things to do. Like, I'm not a human being; I'm a human doing. I've got to be doing something.
That's why I go fishing.
There you go. See,
There's
I don't
nothing
like.
to do in Buffalo.
See, I don't like fishing. I like catching. I don't like fishing. So if I have to wait, I'm like, okay, I'm done.
You got one mosquito hits her, and she goes, "I'm out of here." Like last
No,
weekend.
It's called spiders.
Oh yeah. Well, she don't like spiders anyway.
After
you know.
the second spider, I'm done. No
They
more.
drop down on you after the trees. So
Yeah.
okay, so let's get into this. This is good, Belinda. So we in our community have quite a few places, I guess, to get help. Do we not? And you would know more about those things, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for him? Go ahead, Belinda.
So
I'm
I
sorry.
just wanted to ask him. So when did you start your recovery program for others?
It started in
Yeah, that was-
2012.
Okay.
But it started off like a lot of things do. It's funny, I was quick. If it was bad for me, I was quick to jump in, and if it was really good for me, I generally tended to practice some patience. So the first year, I think I did 1 event. The second year, we did 3 events. The third year, we actually got our 501c3.
Right.
And we did, I don't know, like 7 or 12, and then I partnered with the Jericho Commission and New Beginning Sanctuary.
New beginnings. Yeah.
I've heard of New Beginnings.
Yeah, New Beginning Sanctuary is recovery residences, and Jericho Commission does faith-based mentoring, mostly with veterans courts.
Right.
So I partnered with them, and we opened up with both of their directors, Alan Fish and Michelle Dove, and we opened up a brick and mortar place called the Springfield Recovery Community Center.
Cool.
So that was that was in 2016, and then in 2017, the State Targeted Response, the Opioid Crisis Grant,
Right.
came through, and we were one of the first 2 recovery community centers in the state of Missouri that were funded. There's 4 of them now. So, and then it just kind of grew from there. I mean, last year I think we did over 800 events. We had over 10,000 people through our door, and another 3,000 people that came to outside events.
Now these are all. You say 3,000 people. Are these adults or youth too?
I tell people this. I've got a 8-year-old and a 13-year-old, and they go to pretty much everything I do. If my kids can't be there, I probably shouldn't be there either.
Exactly.
So everything I do, I call it family-friendly, pro-social, sober activities. We do, a lot of meetings, everything from faith-based to smart recovery to like NA groups and things like that at the center. And we also watch like UFC fights, and we have, we're getting ready to have a spades tournament, and we
Explain
do
to her what a UFC fight is.
mixed martial arts. So,
Oh,
She had that daring
that's
to look
cool.
like, huh?
so
It's the stuff on TV that you don't like me to watch, where these guys get in a cage and beat the crap out of each other, and then they go, "Oh, thank you. Oh, I feel good now."
Boxing?
Yeah,
It's
yeah. Well,
boxing?
boxing, kicking, and all this other, that stuff. That stuff. That stuff. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, we started watching UFC fights because
It's not like you do with the pillow. Get off of my side of the bed. But yeah, go ahead. You and they raise funds for that. See, they have people come in and raise funds, and then they have some of these big champions come in and help raise funds for those organizations. That's cool.
Yeah,
Like we
so-
did for. Go ahead.
So everything we do at the center is free. Like UFC fights are free. All the groups are free. Now we do outside activities too. Like we've done everything. I think we've painted 11 elementary school playgrounds now. Just people in recovery and their families giving back.
Cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and we have a stream team that floats and picks up trash for the conservation department. It's the Keeping It Clean stream team, is what it's called.
Can they come in my yard and please pick up my? Everybody drives and they just think my yard is a trash can.
Yeah, that's true.
We keep the lawn nice and clean. I still got to mow the other half, but it's like we're so big and my mower went out and I'm pushing half of it and then.
It's a big yard.
But they constantly throw trash in our. So what you're saying is there's a place to come if people feel like they're just throwing out trash, that they got a place to come and can come and get some help. Correct?
Absolutely, and from there, I mean, we partner with
Without discrimination or anything.
Absolutely not. We partner with all of the treatment centers in the area. We partner with all the recovery housing in the area. So our big thing is kind of, I mean, I want to be the one-stop shop for people that are looking for help or people that are in long-term recovery.
Okay. Now, what about going out into the streets and getting them? This is one thing I talked about with one of my pastor friends. Is like, okay, we know where they're at. We know where they go.
Isn't that sort of how the park ministry works, though?
That's how the park ministry is.
Because
And-
we
Yeah.
sang at some of those
Yeah.
events that they would go and feed and then have music.
Yeah, I mean, we partnered with we've partnered with Freedom City on a couple of those. We partnered with well, we haven't really partnered. I mean, I got to speak at one of them, and then we've always had we've had a booth, and we've gone there to give people support and let them know about us at
There you go.
the Save Our City events.
There you go. Yeah, in fact, we met these people through Save Our City event there at the High Street Baptist Church. Invited them to come in and tell us about it. And there's a whole bunch of programs there that was really nice. But back to and you call yourself Better Life in Recovery. I like that. There is a better life in recovery, and there's nothing wrong with being in recovery. There's no, and you know, the one thing I learned, there's no shame in being in recovery. It's the shame of being out of recovery and sticking in that mess.
So your recovery program isn't just for like addiction.
Right.
It's for many other things, correct?
That's what I was trying to get to.
I always look at
Yes.
it this way. Like I went to Celebrate Recovery for years, and Celebrate Recovery really taught me to look at myself differently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the way it's set up, you've got a biblically based 12-step education. You know, you have somebody that's actually kind of teaching off of one of the steps,
Yeah.
and using biblical principles. And then the next week you'll have somebody that'll share a testimony, and it goes back and forth. So you get a testimony every other week.
Yeah.
And
Now, what do you guys do?
well, let me finish this really
Yeah.
quick. So I always used to look at myself as different. Like, these people would never understand everything I've done
Right.
and all the horrific things that have been done to me. I don't belong here. And as I started to listen to people that had anger and control problems, codependency problems, gambling issues, eating issues, I realized that almost every single one of us had very similar beginnings. We just drove different vehicles to escape and numb ourselves. You know, so through that, I started looking at myself completely differently, and I started being a lot more accepting of other people too, because I realized I don't think there's anybody that doesn't have a hurt or a habit or a hang up that they could be in recovery from.
That's what
That's
Nick.
true.
That's what Mike and Eva was saying. Hurts, hang-ups. What's the other one?
Habits.
Habits.
That's
Thank you. I always forget that one.
Yeah. So what we do, I mean, I always say it's the Springfield Recovery Community Center, Better Life and Recovery is my ministry, but it is very much relational ministry. I don't smack people over the head with a Bible. I mean, pretty much everybody that meets me knows that I believe there's multiple pathways to recovery. The pathway I use is Christ. But I don't care if you're a Christian. I don't care if you're an atheist. I don't care if you're a Muslim. I don't really care what you believe. I believe Christ met everybody where they were,
Amen to that.
loved on them, you know, gave them support and encouragement, and tried to help lift them up. And I believe that that's what we're called to do through our ministry. So, like I said, there is faith-based, but there's also a lot of secular groups there, and I'm perfectly fine with it. You know, I was very much agnostic when I was invited into church, and if they would have forced me to read a Bible and hit me over the head with it, I wouldn't have gone. But instead, some people loved on me, and that's why I went. And I feel the exact same way. I believe this is what this is too. And my end goal, you know, would I love to see everybody get saved? Yes. But in all honesty, I know two things. I know dead people never find recovery. And as a Christian, if we truly care about somebody's salvation, you can't really redeem a dead person's soul. So we should just do the best we can to help love on people, encourage them, and keep them alive, so that maybe at some point the Holy Spirit can work on them and in them, right? So we do things. We give away free Narcan and do free Narcan trainings. We have fentanyl test strips. I'm a huge believer in harm reduction because harm reduction keeps people alive. I mean, like I told you, I've died 8 times and been brought back. If it wasn't for Narcan, several of those times, I wouldn't be here.
Wow.
You know, I wouldn't have met my amazing wife. I wouldn't have 2 beautiful kids because I'd have been dead. You know, so I believe in giving other people those same chances and opportunities.
That's awesome. So you said that Narcan is what saved you several times. So what were some like when you were talking to me on the phone, you had said something about that you died 3 times and they were all within the same period of time. Was that something in the hospital that happened, or
The car wreck that I had a car wreck. I flew a car
okay.
off a cliff. They call it a
wow.
Firebird. They put wings on the side of it. I mean, it flies, but it doesn't land very well.
No,
oh
it don't.
my goodness.
Kind
So-
of lands like a Ford, doesn't he? Like a brick. Yeah.
So yeah, so they lost me 3 times that time. I've also had several overdoses. I'm not a big believer in tough love. That was tried with me. I had one person left in my life, and they came and met with me, and they're like, listen, if you don't stop using and get help, I can't be involved in your life anymore. And they left. And fortunately, about 15 minutes later, they changed their mind and came back. And when they let themselves into my apartment, they found me unconscious in a bathtub full of blood. Because I'm like, well, that's the last person I've got. If I don't have that person, I'm done. So there's also that time, and then I got alcohol poisoning and had to have my stomach pumped and charcoaled and all that fun stuff when I was a teenager. So those are those fun 8 deaths that I've had. So
Wow.
you know, God had a plan for me, and it wasn't
That's
for me to
right.
die then.
Yeah. Wow.
So now that we're so glad that you're here with us
Yeah,
now.
for real.
And now I love the thing on your shirt. I would just keep staring at it. What does it say?
Hope Dealer. It's tattooed on my arm too.
Hope
It's
Dealer. It's like
also the name of my book.
and the name of his book.
okay.
That's what I want to get into next if we can. The name of your book. And it says on his shirt, Hope Dealer. Okay?
Oh.
It's a dealer of hope.
That's
You never
awesome.
put-
I thought it said Hope Healer. It says Hope
He
Dealer.
is a hope healer,
Yeah.
but the name of his
That
book is
is
a hope dealer.
cool.
What's
Okay.
in your book?
Actually, my book is the first half is kind of how it started, how it progressed. I don't get into. I mean, I get some into the drug use. I try not to get too graphic in it. I
Sure.
don't want to do war stories.
Yep.
But you know, one of the things that we need to realize is a lot of times people they develop a substance use. It's brought on by trauma. You know, they have this thing called the ACEs survey. It's Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey. It asks 10 questions, and what they found is, I think if somebody scores A6 or higher, they have their life expectancy is 20 years shorter. And I mean, they are infinitely, I don't remember off the top of my head, but they're infinitely more likely to inject illicit drugs, you know. So we look at that. So I talk about some of that in there, but the second half is kind of all the things that have helped me in my recovery and all the things that have helped me grow my relationship with Christ. So spiritually, so I kind of say, hey, here's something that helped me. Here's how it helped me. Maybe this is something that can help you too. And some of it was just kind of realizations, you know, like I have a chapter in there called Spiritual Spackle. And I talk about the fact I used to live in a house, and one day when I was drunk and mad, I went outside. It had wooden siding, and I punched 2 holes in the side of my house. And because I was a full-time knucklehead, the next morning when I woke up, I was like, holes in my outside.
Full-time knucklehead. I like that one.
You know what? I'll get some duct tape,
Yeah.
and that'll fix the problem.
The Red Green Show.
So I put duct tape over it, and so it's this tan house with silver duct tape. Everybody that drives by sees this eyesore, but me personally, I'm like, look, it's better.
Yeah.
Now, a couple years later, I got ready to get rid of the house, and I'm like, well, I probably need to fix this. And when I took it off, those 2 fist-sized holes had become a great big hole, and water had got back in, and it had mildewed, and, you know, there was all kinds of mold and mildew
Yeah.
on the drywall.
Yeah.
And when I got sober, I thought back to that, and I was like, you know, that's a lot like us.
Yeah.
Life punches holes in our soul, and we use things like drugs, alcohol, food, chaotic relationships,
Yeah.
codependency. We use all these things to cover that hole up, but it doesn't really fix it. Now, we think it's better, but everybody else can see what a wreck and how chaotic our life truly is. Once we decide it's time, hey, you know what, I probably need to fix this, we open it up and we look at those problems that started off like this, but whenever, like when I got sober, I would always relapse because all that trauma would come crashing back. So until I got that addressed, I was always going to have that problem. But when I got saved, I realized that there was a reason that nothing secular had worked for me. Because the Holy Spirit is kind of like spiritual spackle. It's what was made to fill in that hole.
That's right.
And until I was introduced to it, I always say there's two things I think that I've seen that really act as spiritual spackle. For me, one of them was Christ. And I've seen a lot of people that get actively involved in their community, where they become necessary to their community, whether that's, going out and doing positive things to help other nonprofits that are doing good raise money, or they're going out, say, on street cleaning teams and stuff like that, where they really have that connection and belongingness to their community. Those are the two things that I've always seen that are kind of like spiritual spackle for people. So I talk about that. That's one of the chapters. I've got another chapter called Are You Mad? It kind of ends the book with it. It's kind of a call to action. I had gone to a conference once, and there was this guy that was talking, and everybody, he's like, hey, I want everybody to get these bracelets. And it was a little, like, what are they called? Like the silicone bracelets.
Yeah.
And on it, it said, are you M.A.D. And I was thinking, are you mad? And he asked that question when he started. He's like, are you mad? And that morning, I had read an article about somebody who had overdosed. And the comments that I read, who cares? Just another dead junkie. They should give this. I was like, yeah, I'm mad. Oh my gosh, I am so mad.
Yeah.
And as he went through and talked, he finally stopped and he said, now, when I ask you, are you mad? I want you to look at that bracelet and I want you to ask it to yourself again, but ask it this way. Are you making a difference?
Oh.
He said, what are you doing to make a difference? And that really resonated with me because I've always said that if you're living your life to make yourself better and to help the people around you become better, you're living your life right. If you're not doing those things, you might want to look at how you're living your life. Right? So when I heard that really resonated with me. So I want people to do the same thing. Ask yourself every day when you wake up before you go to bed, what am I doing to make a difference in my community and work? It could be in your household, but what are you doing to make a difference? And I think that's something, if everybody would focus on making a positive difference, even if it's a little thing,
Yeah.
right? Imagine, 350 million people in the United States doing one positive thing every single
wow.
day. I mean,
Yeah.
what would our country be like?
Yeah.
I don't think we'd have all of the hate and anger that we have right now.
No.
Oh my goodness. That's sad on its own. So in your recovery program that you have, you've probably seen a lot of people come through and have like results and stuff. So can you tell us about a few of the people that have come through your program? Not their names necessarily,
No.
but some,
So, I'll start off by talking about one who his PO was supposed to send him to a different treatment place. And that's back when I worked at Preferred, but we had Better Life and Recovery going.
P.O.
And his probation officer. And his probation officer actually said, you know what, I think you'd be better off with David because of all your interests, because he liked to do outdoor stuff. So he ended up getting referred to me, and, at the time, I mean, he hasn't been on probation now for years, and he's him and his daughter are at every single float. We used to go bowl once a week. Now we're starting to try to do it once a month. He started bowling. Now he's sponsored by several people to bowl. He just got back from Kansas City this weekend after bowling. I mean, but just to see him, and this is what I tell people. This is why I love what we do. Recovery supports are kind of like physical therapy, and treatment's kind of like surgery. Some people need surgery, but when you get done with surgery, that physical therapy is going to make that surgery better. It's going to help it take, right? It's going to teach you how to use what they changed when
Right.
you had surgery. But there's other people that don't need surgery.
Right.
They just need that social support, that connection. So that's kind of how I see what we do. And, when I got off probation, guess who I didn't go see anymore? I didn't go see my probation officer willingly.
Yeah.
When I got out of treatment, they told me I was graduated. I didn't continue coming 3 times a week to my classes. I never really like going to meetings. I will go to one every couple months if I have a friend that's speaking or something like that. But in all honesty, that's never really been my thing. It's helped a ton of people, you know, on the anonymous programs. But for me, that wasn't one of those things that really helped me. So after I wasn't court ordered to go to those meetings anymore, I stopped going to them. But you know what? Floating is my second church. Like I told you, I don't like to fish. But man, you put me in a kayak,
Oh, I hear you.
that's my happy place.
We
Oh,
did
no
that 2 weeks
kidding.
ago to Bennett Springs, go floating down there, down that river, you know, and we met everybody and their dog and everybody down there,
And their dogs.
and their
yeah.
dogs down there. Yeah, by God, that was the last week before school started, and we picked the wrong weekend for that one. Well, no, we were actually going to go the weekend before that, and then River Jim said, "No, you don't go that weekend. You go the weekend after it." So we picked that week. Guess what? They were all down there too.
Well, it was pretty busy, but not as busy.
Oh,
They said the
man.
week before school started, there was just, I mean, it was bumper to bumper kayaks still.
And you talk about, okay, you talk about in recovery, don't go floating. Number one, all you do is smell beer and pot. And I'm not lying. All we did was smell beer and marijuana. And I mean, hey, yeah. But, and then you find it all over the place because they're floating. You got, you know, and beer floats. Get it what I'm saying? Beer floats. So people lose beer because they tip their boat over or
Right.
whatever. So you're finding it everywhere. It's not. You don't even have to buy it on the river. It's there, you know. And then so, but you know, we go down there and we just float and we eat our
We do
bologna
it.
sandwich.
We usually
and,
do it on an off day, so
yeah.
it's not a busy
yeah,
party
so
weekend.
We're like
See.
you. We love to kayak. Oh,
See, we don't care.
Yeah.
And here's the reason why, and I tell people this.
I do
If
because
it's-
I don't want her around that stuff. I always
get
try
it.
to protect her, no matter. And she says I don't want to be around. She gets scared sometimes, and I'm going. Well, you know what? You don't need to be around. I try to protect her. She don't need to be around those kind of people anyway. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep. But the people I work with, they're going to work with those
Yeah,
people. They're
yeah.
going to live next door
yeah.
to people that are actively using, that
Yes.
aren't making the best choices.
Yeah,
so
we just hang around vets that like to beat up people. Just kidding. We can take care of ourselves, but we hang around vets, you know. But it's tough because you know, you might want to get into this before we have to close, is about choosing our friends. Once we're in recovery and we get out, we got to make it all different. We have to have a life that's different. You've got to walk a different life. You have to put that past behind you and go forward. That's what I had to do. Did you do that too?
yes, and that's one of the reasons, like I said, that we do even like the floats and stuff. If I'm all by myself and I'm floating, and somebody offers me a beer,
Yeah, you
I
might
might
have
be
it.
in trouble.
Yeah.
But if I'm with a group of, you know, we
Yeah.
float anywhere from 10 to 50 people. If I'm with a group of sober people and somebody I'm with uses, they're in trouble. It kind of shifts the dynamic because now you have a group of people there to support you and give you encouragement and help you through those problems.
You know what was so cool? Before we even got on our float, and all those people down there, we had communion. Remember that?
Yeah, we
had
did.
communion right in front of them. So they can have all the beer and drunk stuff they want, you know, and stuff like that. We had communion, and then we went floating. That was so fun. So we're running out of time. Tell us how, I loved your book. Well, we know how to get a hold of you at Better Life in Recovery here in Springfield, Missouri. How, if somebody was out there on the street right now listening to you and needed help, how could they get a hold of you?
So we are at 1925 East Bennett, Suite J.
There you go.
It's kind of off Glenstone and Bennett, back behind the neighborhood Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
Our number's 417-368-0852.
Okay, could you repeat that again? Because somebody else asked that earlier.
It's 417-368-0852.
There you go.
Okay.
They can also go to the website, Better Life and Recovery. If they send questions, that way we get them. So, I mean, I highly encourage people to come check out the Springfield Recovery Community Center, learn how to have an amazing time sober.
Right.
You know, whether you're in recovery or you just don't drink and use. I mean, we have open mic nights. I mean, we have game
really?
nights. Yeah, I mean, we have movie nights. We have so much fun there.
Hey, I actually want to go there now. They got karaoke,
Open mic?
karaoke night. Yeah, sing some redneck hi-ya songs. My wife and I have a CD out. We sing Native American songs, but we sing a lot of tribal songs. You know what I'm saying? So I was born an alcoholic. I don't know if you ever know what fetal alcohol syndrome was.
Yep.
But I was a child that nobody really wanted because I couldn't sit still. And to this day, I still can't sit still. Ask her.
That's two of us.
Yeah, I'm the one. Well, we're almost out of time, and you've told us how they can get a hold of you. What is there in the community that you might need that we could bless you with? What is it that you could help the people out in the community with, and maybe give out to them, or do they need Bibles? Do you need Bibles? Do you need what do you need to help the folks?
You know, unfortunately, I think I'm probably along with everybody else. We need a bigger space,
Yeah.
and we need funding to help get it.
There you go.
I mean, I think that's always a problem. We can always use food because we have a lot of people that drop in. I mean, we're not a drop-in center. I don't want people to just come drop in and sleep on the couch.
Yeah.
But if somebody comes in and they're going to meetings, groups, whatever we're having, whenever it's there, and they need to eat, I like to make sure we have something there to give them to eat. Coffee's always free, water's always free. But we always try to have some food too. So those kind of donations help. Cleaning donations, always help. We've got a fundraiser breakfast coming up, Hope Dealer Breakfast. You can go to betterlifeandrecovery.com or go to Better Life and Recovery on Facebook and
When's the
look at
breakfast?
the event. It's October 13th.
October
It's a
13th.
virtual breakfast. So we're
Oh.
going to send you a box that's got my book, a Hope Dealer coffee mug. It's got coffee. We're going to have some cookies that come with it. It's going to
Hey.
come in a thermal tote, and then we're going to have everybody tune in for an hour. Even if you can't afford the box,
What time?
you can still come for free. I believe it's going to be from 8 to 9 in the morning.
Oh my, that'd be cool if we did that live here on Axe Media with you, and then had coffee with you guys. I've been just thinking about shows. I mean, I was thinking that's how my brain works now. That and taking care of her. But we just want to thank you for the time that you've spent here. And is there any other things that you would like? I'm sure that the time is too short. I just had all kinds of questions I wanted to ask you, and then we went over the questions before you got here. So time is really short. Is there any?
I just want to say that I love your philosophy about meeting people where they are, because Jesus always did that. He never, every person he met, every story that you read about Jesus is he met people where they were at.
Yeah, and I will say I think that there's a lesson to be learned there. Number one, as a Christian, be transparent.
Yes.
Let people know that you still have problems. Talk about it, because a lot of times people are afraid to talk about their problems because they feel like their faith isn't as strong as everybody else's, because even though everybody else, church is almost like Facebook or Instagram sometimes. People show their best face.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
we
you
know.
don't see what people are truly going through. And the
Yeah.
other part is
Exactly.
definitely, love on people, show people compassion. It was Christians that stopped me from even entering a church for decades
Yeah.
because of the hate and judgment that I always found from them.
Judgment.
We
yeah.
got it too.
Yep.
We get it too, because my hair was real long down here. I'm not kidding you. We go to churches and people say, "When you gonna cut your hair?" or that I'm a Native American and won't even let us in the church.
We've actually had that happen
Yeah,
up north. I was shocked.
yeah. She'd never seen racism, and we have it right here in our own home. And people don't realize they just think you're, I don't know. I don't know. My daughter went to school over here in one of these little towns, and they thought all the Indians were dead, and her social studies taught her that all the Indians were dead. And of course, you know me, I had to go to school and say, hey, first off, here's my tribal card. I'm full-blooded Native American. And by the way, her grandmother is still alive on the reservation, 98 years old, an honored, very elderly
elder.
woman in our community. And so I think you need to apologize to her. And so we did. And then we had they always do this every year. They have this little thing during Thanksgiving, and all the little boys put on a little paper vest and all this other stuff. Well, my daughter was the only one that came in. Oh, it was cool how they had all the little dresses and the pilgrims, the little girls dressed up in pilgrims. Well, she was the only Indian one, that Native American one that went in there, but she went in there with her jingle dress on, her regalia, and she goes ching, ching, ching. Oh my God, she was just the thing there at the school. They think we're all dead, but we're not. Just like in recovery, they think you're dead, but you're not. You're
Amen.
healing. God's restoring you. You know what? Before we come to close, we'd like to, if you don't mind, pray for these people who need help and bring them to the Lord. Because maybe there's someone out there that needs help right now, that is asking for help, and maybe you're watching this program and you want to get a hold of him and his ministry, and we've got the information right here on our about the website, and then also the information on how to get a hold of him here in Springfield. Just feel free to get a hold of him. And what was your name again? I'll be glad to.
Dave Stoker.
I know. There we go. Okay.
Sorry.
All right, honey, I was asking him. So in the meantime, while we're putting everything I love her. She's awesome. God brought her into my life. We met each other when
He
we were.
forgets a lot.
Well, I do. No, now I have brain trauma. I was pushed inside of a mountain over here inside of Branson, Missouri. I was working at Shepherd of the Hills, and I lost my memory for several years. And then I'm a vet myself, so I do have trauma quite a bit. So I hide it a lot sometimes. So he's probably already psychoanalyzed us already. He's got a degree in doing that. We'll talk about that after we get off the. We love you, and we want to thank you for being here.
Yes,
Would you
thank
pray
you.
us out and just let these people know that we love you and that God loves you, and His way is the sacred way. But if you need help, reach out. Don't stay in that muck and mire. Lift up your hand, and say, and we're going to be there to pick you up. How do we do it? Through programs like him, and this program of Hope, the Hope Dealer. We'll just call you the Hope Dealer. If you would, pray for these folks and let them know that you love them, that God loves them, and God's going to bless them through your ministry and the work that you do. In Jesus' name.
So, dear Heavenly Father, we just want to ask that you would reach out to those people, that you would put people in their lives who are still out there struggling, God, that you would have people in their lives that would show them the compassion, the love, the acceptance that they need to realize that whatever they're doing, that isn't the way that they have to continue living their lives. God, I would ask that you would come to these people's lives, God, and that you would close that old chapter and open up a new chapter of salvation and recovery, God.
Yes.
And that you would just continue to pour into them so that they could turn around and continue to help other people and deal hope just like they've had hope dealt to them.
Yes.
I would also ask, God, that you would just allow us to continue being your hands and feet to the people that we meet. And in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you for listening, and we want you to stay tuned. We have one more show coming up tonight, and we want to thank you, Mr. Hope Dealer, for being here with us, and we invite you to come back in Jesus' name. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Have a
My
good day.
pleasure.